The HFY Imperium had crushed 91 worlds without breaking a sweat. Then they reached Earth's outpost and laughed. Only one soldier? Their general mocked. But when that drop pod hit the dirt, and the human inside walked out without a word, they realized too late: Earth doesn't send armies. It sends extinction, wrapped in a man's skin. The galaxy had seen wars, but never quiet like this. Never so lopsided. The HFY Imperium, undefeated in over 2 centuries, had swept through 91 planetary systems without resistance worth remembering. Now they turned to the Hellion Gate, a wormhole Earth had stabilized and claimed, bottlenecking hyperspace trade. The Imperium wanted it. Earth refused. And that refusal was all it took. General Varrichthal addressed the Galactic Council with the self-assured tone of a predator already chewing. We gave Earth a chance to withdraw. They responded with silence. Now we show them the cost. The feed switched to a live broadcast. Massive troop carriers descended on Zeros 3, kicking up dust storms as 10,000 armored HFY soldiers disembarked. Anti-orbital platforms, ground crawlers, plasma walkers, everything necessary for a full siege. Still no sign of resistance. Not a turret. Not a drone. Not a single warning shot. Then it happened. A single drop pod. Not from orbit. From deep Earth command. It slammed into the ground like a meteor and left a small crater smoking in the rock. No escorts. No tech signature except a biological life form and a single encrypted ID tag. Asset Ward? The hatch opened. Out stepped a man, bare arms covered in frost burns, wearing a black vest and ragged boots, dragging a steel case that looked half-welded, half-beaten into shape. His face was blank. His pace unhurried. One HFY scout blinked his tri-lens eyes and muttered, "That's it? That's their army?" General Varrichthal watched through a command drone, lips curling. "You people are cowards. Only one soldier? Is this surrender or stupidity?" On the surface, Captain Elias Ward didn't respond. He just kept walking. The HFY forward team moved in, 20 warriors fanning out in a semicircle, rifles raised. Standard protocol. They barked demands in 3 languages. Ward stopped. He opened the case. Click. Then a sound none of the HFY had heard before, an analog chime, so ancient it almost didn't register as a threat. Then the first soldier's head exploded. No projectile. No flash. Just gone. Panic erupted. One fired. Another screamed. The rest scrambled for cover. But by then it was too late. Their visors filled with blinding white static. Their comms burst with an Earth signal that bypassed all encryption. The code embedded in their implants began to rewrite itself. Warnings in their HUDs flashed. System override. Neural link compromised. Defense protocols disabled. 5 of them collapsed twitching. 3 ran into each other and detonated grenades meant for Ward. 2 began shooting into the sky, blind and incoherent. All within 60 seconds. Ward stood over the last one, kneeling, shivering uncontrollably. The alien's eyes, black and glassy, pleaded for something: mercy, maybe. Understanding. A name. Ward said nothing. He closed the case. Walked past the corpse. In orbit, Varrichthal stood in silence. "This is not a soldier," he muttered. One of his captains, pale green and visibly shaken, stepped closer. "Permission to deploy mech support? We believe he." "Deploy everything," the general growled. "I want the forest burned. I want that man's bones in a jar by nightfall." Earth's War Council didn't reply. They didn't need to. Ward had no backup, no satellites, no air support. What he had was enough. Hours passed. The Imperium sent units, platoons, squads, mechanized hunters, wave after wave. Some stopped moving mid-march. Some turned on each other. Others vanished entirely. No trace. No signal. Just silence. Back at the war camp, Varrichthal clenched his jaw. "What are we missing?" A junior tactician stammered. "Sir, we believe he's bypassing combat entirely." He's corrupting their decision centers. Their implants. Maybe their perception feeds. We're not fighting him. He's reprogramming us. Varikthal's fist crashed through the display table. That's impossible. But it wasn't. Earth didn't send soldiers anymore. It sent algorithms with lungs. Kill programs in flesh. Ward was the culmination of a project Earth never disclosed to the Council, a black site product of centuries of Death World survival science. Technically human. Functionally something else. Another attack squad entered the fray. Their scanners located movement, heat signatures near the ruins of a supply depot. They approached. Movement, 2 figures. No. 3. Targets locked, the squad leader shouted. And then his team vanished. Back at command, the feed stopped. On screen, a new message appeared. Error. Transmission rerouted through Ghost Protocol. Source unknown. Varikthal slammed his claws on the console. Get me that soldier's brain print. I want to know what he is. A second later, the room went dark. A voice echoed, not over comms. In the air. Through the hull. Ward's voice. You invaded a death world. This is how we say hello. Lights flickered back. Several officers lay on the floor, bleeding from the ears. Varikthal stepped back, chest heaving. His claws curled into fists. His pride burned, but a deeper fear ignited underneath. For the first time in his life, the general didn't feel like a predator. He felt hunted. Earth had only sent one soldier. Because one was all it took. The smoke from the crushed scout team still curled upward when the next phase began. No one gave the order. Ward didn't need one. His war had already started. Deep within the jungle's thickets, the Imperium's forward base adjusted tactics. Dozens of autonomous mechwalkers were activated. Each was 2 tons of steel, programmed to act without fear, immune to the psychological games of carbon-based adversaries. A direct response to the chaos left behind. The first unit activated and stepped into the jungle. It made it 11 steps. Then, without warning, its targeting array overloaded, mistaking every tree trunk for an enemy. The turret spun madly, shredded the unit next to it. 2 more followed suit. They began firing on each other, executing non-existent kill orders. When the command center tried to shut them down, the override signal returned. Earth's anthem. Not lyrics. Just the melody. But warped. Distorted like a lullaby in a nightmare. The chief systems officer stared at the readout, his fingers trembling. Sir, the enemy has rewritten our command language. They're issuing synthetic orders in our own protocol. General Varikthal crushed the console under his fist. Shut them down manually. We can't. The mechs now recognize us as hostiles. Outside, fire bloomed in the distance. The Imperium's own machines were tearing the base apart. Screaming soldiers ran from their tents as their auto turrets turned red and tracked them. Everything automated, everything efficient, was now Ward's to play with. Within the chaos, a single transmission cut through the mayhem. It was just 3 words. Turn around. Slowly. The general's aide spun in place. There was nothing behind him but shadows. He collapsed a second later. No blood. No scream. Just dropped like a puppet whose strings had been sliced. Ward never wasted energy. By the next hour, the base had lost all long-range comms. Drones stopped responding. Scouts refused to deploy. Officers began issuing handwritten orders, desperate to avoid system infiltration. General Varikthal stood before a flickering hollow map of the battlefield. Every red zone, designated evac-controlled, was now black. Not overtaken. Just dead. No signal. No sound. No trace. This is not combat, Varikthal growled. This is eradication. One of the remaining tech priests stepped forward, clinging to formality. We believe the human is utilizing neurowave interference. Maybe something linked to emotional contagion or tactile subversion. We don't know. But our men report hallucinations. Hearing voices. Seeing family members who aren't here. They say he speaks in their minds. That he's learning from them. Varrichthal stared at him, unblinking. What are you saying? The priest hesitated. Then, with a dry gulp, I think he's not using tech. I think he is the tech. That sentence hit harder than any cannon shell. Later that night, 2 squads were dispatched manually into Grid 9, the last known area where Ward had been spotted. No AI support. No drones. Just boots, guns, and nerves. Only one returned. He crawled back into camp with half a leg, half a face, and something carved into his armor. The medics peeled it off. A message was etched into the plating, primitive, brutal. He learns fast. You don't. That soldier died 2 minutes later. A sudden seizure. Brainstem failure. Back at command, panic overtook pride. Captains argued over whether to retreat or escalate. But escalation meant orbital strikes, and orbital strikes meant admitting failure. And Varrichthal didn't tolerate the word fail. So he stood and raised his voice over theirs. He's just a man, he shouted. Just a single, miserable Earth creature. The longer you build him into a myth, the stronger he becomes in your minds. Pull yourselves together. He bleeds. He breaks. General, a quiet voice interrupted. With respect, none of us have seen him bleed. Not once. The room fell into silence. That night, 3 more patrols vanished. Their tracking log showed them moving in circles for hours, tracing shapes. One looped a perfect spiral for 27 kilometers before all 7 soldiers dropped dead at once. An autopsy revealed something unnatural. All of their adrenal glands had ruptured simultaneously. From fear. Varrichthal watched the report in silence. His claws tapped against the steel desk. Then he said, to no one in particular, I underestimated Earth. That was my mistake. No, sir, said the aide beside him, voice barely audible. You underestimated what they would allow themselves to create. It wasn't Earth's military that frightened them now. It was what Earth had deemed acceptable. Ward wasn't a weapon. He was a threshold, the point where morality stopped and necessity took its place. The general knew this war would no longer be won by numbers, or force, or pride. It would be won, if at all, by surviving until something else stopped Ward. The problem was, nothing ever had. The night brought no quiet. Not in the Vok camp. Not in the minds of those still breathing. The jungle around them groaned with strange echoes, some mechanical, others unmistakably human. Soldiers tried to sleep, but those who did awoke screaming or didn't wake at all. Command replaced traditional communications with flares and hand signals to avoid interception. Even whispers felt unsafe. The fear wasn't that he might be listening. It was the knowledge that he was. Varrichthal had stopped speaking in grand proclamations. His voice had dropped to low commands, tight and precise. He refused to sit. He refused to remove his armor. It wasn't discipline anymore, it was survival instinct masquerading as protocol. One of the remaining engineers approached with a makeshift jammer strapped to his back, sweat pouring down his scaled forehead. We've established a dead zone. Nothing gets in or out. He can't hear us here. He's already inside the minds of half my troops, Varrichthal replied without turning. What good is silence if they're screaming on the inside? The engineer swallowed and backed away. Across the perimeter, men began to abandon their posts. Not run. Not desert. Just walk into the trees. Calm. Smiling. Some carried weapons. Others didn't. When squads followed, they found empty boots, still warm, and not a single body. Then the broadcast started again. Not over official comms, those were disabled. The voice came from static, from earpieces turned off, from vibrations in metal. Ward's voice didn't boom. It seeped. I'm not hunting you. You walked into my cage. Do you know what Earth did when the last invader landed on our soil? We buried him. And we fed the worms with pride. Some troops tore out their earpieces. One carved the skin from his head just to make it stop. Nothing worked. The voice didn't need electronics anymore. In one tent, a seasoned Yvok lieutenant tried to shoot himself. The weapon jammed. Not by failure, by lockout. A remote override had bricked every safety escape built into their systems. There was no off switch anymore. Only Ward. The general watched all of this unfold in grim silence. The ground commander from the Eastern Front barged into his tent without permission. His face was pale blue, veins darkened from stress. You must order a retreat. This is not a war. This is extermination dressed as strategy. Varikthal shook his head slowly. We do not run. Not from one man. You're not facing one man. You're facing every horror he's ever learned to become. The general turned, eyes narrowing. You want to retreat? You'll do it alone. The rest of us will face this creature. The commander opened his mouth, then froze. Because standing behind Varikthal, visible only to him, was a figure in black. Ward smiled. It was gone a moment later. No trace. No sound. But the commander's mind cracked. His knees buckled. He collapsed without a word. And from that moment forward he never spoke again. That was when Varikthal understood. Fear wasn't spreading. It was being administered. Ward was inoculating them, one by one, with terror that didn't just frighten, it rewrote who they were. On the fourth night, the rituals began. Alien officers lit fires and spoke prayers to gods they hadn't named since childhood. They built shrines of broken gear. One unit wore their armor inside out to confuse the Shadow, as they called him. It didn't work. Then came the recordings. Ward sent footage. Not just of his kills. Of the moments before. Soldiers speaking. Laughing. Complaining about their families. Then the silence. Then the aftermath. He made them watch. Forced them to remember these were living things before they were wreckage. This is your future, his voice said through the static. You won't die in glory. You'll die knowing I listened to you breathe. Varikthal had seen many enemies. None had ever made his warriors believe they were already dead. He gathered his remaining command staff. The jungle howled outside. Inside he paced. He's not just a weapon. He's a lesson. Earth didn't send him to win. They sent him to teach us not to come back. No one spoke. Then one of the lower-ranking officers, young, nervous, trembling, stood up. Then why are we still here? The general looked at him. Really looked. For a moment he wanted to execute him for cowardice. But instead he answered. Because if we leave without killing him, the rest of the galaxy will think we can be broken. The officer nodded. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. His body convulsed for 3 seconds. Then stopped. Still. Cold. The medics couldn't find a cause. No wounds. No toxins. Just gone. A voice crackled to life in every helmet. I warned you. This isn't a war. It's a graveyard. And I'm the soil. That night, every soldier in the southern camp dug a hole and slept in it. Not because they were told to, but because it felt safer to already be buried. The challenge came at dawn. General Varikthal had lost 2/3 of his force without a single traditional engagement. No glorious battles, no flags fallen, only whispers, missing bodies, broken minds. The survivors avoided mirrors. Too many had reported seeing someone else staring back. He stood before his remaining soldiers, voice scraped raw from sleepless nights. You say he is death. I say he bleeds. You say we run. I say we fight. No one cheered. They didn't have the energy. But they followed. Not out of loyalty, out of the cold desperation that told them this would end one way or another. The general activated an emergency beacon and broadcast on all frequencies. Elias Ward. I offer you single combat. No machines. No tricks. Just you and me. Silence. Then, a voice on every channel, every surface, soft as breath. Accepted. They met in a clearing stripped by fire. Ward emerged with calm steps, dragging a weapon made from scavenged wreckage, half blade, half conduit. His body was marked, not from injury, but from deliberate precision. Symbols burned into flesh, some alien, some earthborn. His expression wasn't anger. It was curiosity, as if studying a specimen he already knew the end of. Varric stepped forward with full armor, plasma lance humming in his grip. "I've seen 1,000 wars. You're nothing new." Ward tilted his head. "That's the problem. You still think I'm trying to be." The general charged. They clashed with the weight of entire histories behind them. Metal struck metal, sparks lit the ground, and the soldiers formed a silent ring around their duel, watching gods disguised as men. Ward moved like gravity was optional. His weapon was crude but flawless. Every strike had purpose. Every step drew Varric deeper into exhaustion. "You killed thousands," the general growled. "For what? Glory?" Ward deflected a blow with the flat of his blade and leaned in. "I killed them to leave you alive!" Varric roared and swung wide. Ward ducked, reversed, and slammed the butt of his weapon into the general's jaw. Blood hit the dirt. Around them, the silence deepened. Ward stepped back. "You're still trying to understand. That's why you've already lost. You think this proves something? I think your people will remember this differently than you do." The general gritted his teeth, lunged, and drove his lance forward, catching Ward across the ribs. Blood flowed, hot and real. Ward smiled. Finally! He dropped his weapon, grabbed the lance with both hands, and yanked the general forward. They collided, flesh to armor. Ward slammed a knee into Varric midsection, wrenched the weapon free, and tossed it aside. Hand to hand now. Raw. Ugly. Honest. Fists landed. Bones cracked. The soldiers around them held their breath. Ward spoke through bloodied lips. "Your empire thinks fear is a weakness. Ours embraces it." He grabbed Varric arm, twisted until it snapped at the elbow. The general howled. Ward didn't stop. He grabbed the back of his head and slammed it into the dirt once, twice, 3 times. Then let go. The general lay stunned, gasping. Ward stood over him. "You're not the lesson. You're the warning." He reached down and yanked free the neural spike embedded in Varric spine, a control node tied to HFY command systems. The general screamed, convulsed, then went still. Ward turned to the silent circle of soldiers. "You report this. You broadcast every second. You let them see. Earth sent one." He raised the spike in one hand, blood dripping from the other. "Because one was enough." No one moved. Then one soldier dropped his weapon. Another followed. Then a dozen more. Ward didn't stay to watch. He walked through the line, unchallenged, fading into the forest as if he had never been there at all. Behind him, an empire collapsed. And no one remembered the war. Only the name. The transmission arrived before the sun did. A distorted pulse, carried through subspace channels the HFY no longer trusted. It echoed through every abandoned relay and repeater they had left behind in retreat. No encryption. No watermark. Just Ward's voice, calm, slow, and painfully clear. "Transmission complete. Mission concluded. Asset disengaged." Across the galaxy, the council chambers fell silent. Delegates from 37 systems listened, watching the silent feed from Zero's 3. The screen showed ruins, ash, and bodies. No flags, no banners. Just a crater where a command post used to be, and a long trail of footprints walking away into smoke. The HFY delegation sat motionless, each representative staring at the image as though it might blink. Counselor Itron of the Euler Alliance finally broke the silence. "That's it. He left?" A human ambassador leaned forward, eyes unreadable. "Yes." Itron frowned. "And that's considered restraint?" The human only nodded. On Zero's 3, the few survivors gathered themselves around the remains of their general, whose body had been preserved by the remaining command crew for proper rites. No one touched the spike Ward had pulled free. It still sat in a sealed box, pulsing faintly like a warning beacon. One medic spoke softly, as if afraid the jungle might still be listening. "He could have killed all of us," another replied, voice dry. "He already did." What remained of the fleet lifted from the surface without ceremony. They didn't radio ahead. They didn't carry their wounded. They just wanted distance. The name Elias Ward was never spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. It was a scar now, etched into the species' memory. On Earth, no celebrations were held. No news reports. No parades. Ward's file was updated quietly in a secure vault buried beneath layers of black protocols. Status, redacted. Outcome, functional. Emotional stability, within range. The supervising analyst hesitated before checking the final box. She stared at the entry for several seconds before typing a single line into the internal remarks field. Recommend immediate reevaluation of psychological parameters. Subject exhibits extreme operational autonomy. She sent the report, then leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. Ward, meanwhile, was already far from the battlefield. He had abandoned the jungle, the case, and even the last remnants of his armor. Only the scars remained. He walked alone beneath alien skies, humming a song no one had written. He wasn't heading anywhere in particular. He didn't need to. His job was never about the destination. It was always about the demonstration. The galaxy had asked a question: how dangerous could humanity be? Earth hadn't answered with rhetoric or negotiation. It had sent a message in flesh. Not a soldier. Not a hero. A warning. Back on the Helion gate, automated defenses resumed scanning traffic. Merchant vessels cautiously resumed routes. Patrols kept a respectful distance from Earth's new perimeter. No one challenged the claim again. The galaxy adjusted. Quietly. Subtly. Recruitment propaganda across the Ivak Imperium shifted focus from conquest to consolidation. New academies opened that emphasized diplomacy and strategy over brute force. Behind closed doors, High Command restructured doctrine with a single guiding rule: never engage humans alone. Whispers grew among fringe colonies. Stories of a human ghost that spoke through machines. Soldiers who stared into nothing and came back changed. Legends of an Earth-born phantom with no face, no rank, and no soul. One trader claimed he passed a man on a desolate mining moon. Tall. Scarred. Barefoot. Whistling. He said the man looked up, nodded, and asked if the war was over yet. The trader didn't ask which war. He didn't need to. Earth's official report to the Council was a single page. Imperial hostilities neutralized. Helion Gate secure. Galactic peace maintained. It was signed not by a general or a politician. Just a number, asset #33 Omega. And beneath that, in red ink, do not deploy again unless outcome is irrelevant. A quiet understanding settled over the systems like a storm that had passed too fast to register. Earth had not bragged. It had not explained. It had simply shown what happens when you force a death world to speak. And the voice that answered wasn't angry. It was indifferent. It didn't care about borders, or honor, or legacy. It existed only to finish the conversation in the most permanent way possible. And then walk away. Elias Ward never returned to Earth. He never contacted command. Never activated his beacon. Never asked for extraction. He didn't need to. Because Earth knew exactly where he was. And that was enough. Sometimes silence speaks louder than victory. And Ward? Ward was the quiet you send when you never want the enemy to speak again.